The Buffalo Bills have signed defensive lineman DeShawn Williams. Who is he? What does he bring to the table? And how does he factor into this defense? We're going to break all of that down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. The Buffalo Bills have signed defensive lineman DeShawn Williams, and so my objective today is to tell you who he is, what I learned from studying him on film, and then how he fits this Buffalo Bills defensive line. First of all, a big shout out to Ryan Talbot for breaking the news. He was first on this scoop, had it early on Thursday morning, and then, of course, the rest of the football world learned about it later that afternoon when it became official. But shout out Ryan Talbot for having this scoop. So let's talk about DeShawn Williams. Signed a one-year deal with the Buffalo Bills. We don't have the terms of the contract right now. I guess it's a pretty small contract for 1 year. He's 31 years old and was an undrafted free agent out of Clemson in 2015 that began his NFL career with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's 6'1", 303 pounds, 32.25-inch arms, 9.25-inch hands, had an RAS score of 6.33. So pretty decent package of size and athleticism, not elite or anything like that, but about average when it comes to size and athleticism. Mentioned that he was an undrafted free agent out of Clemson in 2015, and his football path has been very winding. Now, over the last 4 years, he's really stabilized that, but it took a while. From 2015 through 2019, he bounced around a bunch of different practice squads. He spent time with the Bengals, the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Colts. And then he even signed with the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL in 2020. Then the season was canceled. He finds himself working at an Amazon warehouse. He was cut 10 different times. And then he had a big breakthrough when the NFL season happened in 2020, which was his third stint with the Denver Broncos. He finally got an opportunity in 2020 and has never really looked back. From 2020 through 2022 with Denver, he was a primary starter for that defensive line. Then he goes to Carolina in 2023 and started 10 games and was a primary starter for that defensive line. Now, you can connect the dots and look at the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers this past year, Jairo Avero, who was previously with Denver, and realized that probably latched on with Coach Avero in Denver, brought him over to Carolina, and then he hits the free agent market, and he's now a member of the Buffalo Bills. But over the last 4 seasons, he started 44 games. It's not like this is a nothing signing. This is a player that started 44 games in the NFL over the last 4 seasons. He's played between 41 and 52% of either Denver or Carolina's defensive snaps in each of the last 4 seasons. And during that time, he's collected 148 tackles, 9 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 9 pass breakups, and an interception. He actually intercepted Cam Newton. So there's a little introduction into kind of his story, his path to this point. And I've already taken the time to study his film, watched 3 of his games from 2023 with the Carolina Panthers to get acquainted with this skill set. I want to break that down for you here in just a moment, and then, of course, project him to this Buffalo Bills defensive line, so be sure to stick with me. Folks, you shouldn't have to worry when you're looking to buy tickets for your next big event. Well, you don't have to, because Game Time is here for you, and it's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a best price guarantee. I mean, simply put, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The app is awesome, easy to navigate. They have flash deals, and I love this. Whenever you buy a ticket from Game Time, they send it straight to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails to find it. It's super easy, so snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right, folks, I watched the tape for DeShawn Williams out of 2023, watched him play against the Miami Dolphins, watched him play against the New Orleans Saints, and watched him play against the Dallas Cowboys. Want to share with you what stood out to me on film when watching DeShawn Williams. I think my favorite component of his game was his recognition skills. I think he's a very good processor, understands blocking schemes, and from there understands how to put himself in good positions, particularly to defend the run. I think it also stands out that he has heavy hands. He's got knockback power that enables him to control reps. Trench battles in the NFL, all about being able to win with your hands. And not only does he have pop, right, to get his hands on people and get those pads to jolt and kind of knock them back, which enables him to take control of a rep, but from there, he's also good at displacing hands from his frame and clearing his pads. There's tons of examples on his film of him being able to get his hand on a wrist or on an elbow and lift them off and get his pads clear. It's pretty fun watching him do that, and he's got that knockback power. So good recognition skills and good pop in his hands, and he's a pretty good hand fighter altogether. I wouldn't say that he's got a ton of different moves to get off of blocks, but he's got a ton of different moves to clear his pads and deconstruct blocks, if that makes sense. I like the motor. He's very consistent with his pursuit effort. You know, he's 300 pounds. He's chasing down from the backside, getting out into space, trying to chase down quick passes and screens. You will like the way that he plays the game. He gets after it. He plays really hard. And you kind of expect that for a guy that had a winding path, an undrafted free agent, cut 10 times, working at Amazon, working for the CFL, you know, late bloomer like that. You can sense that he has that type of urgency when you watch him play on film. As a pass rusher, my biggest takeaway was that he was not put in good positions. Playing for Coach Avero, it's an odd front defense, so 3-4. And 3-4 is very boring for defensive linemen. You don't get to be in attack mode very often. And in the case of Avero, or excuse me, in the case of DeShawn Williams in Avero's scheme, he's aligned primarily as like a 4-eye or a 4 or a 5 tech. So he's playing either on the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle, head up on the offensive tackle, or on the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. And he's just not equipped to be able to win consistently as a pass rusher from those wider alignments. He's rushing the C gap. And so I'm pretty sure DeShawn Williams is going to be excited to play for the Bills where he can rush the B gaps. Those wider alignments for a guy like this just don't make a lot of sense. So he's a lot of times just getting outside the tackle and contain rushing. He knows he has no chance to get home. But on the instances where you saw him get a chance to rush through the A gap or the B gap, which was not very often, you can see that he has a little bit to him. And you could see him really working the two things that I complimented already the hands, right? Like being very deliberate about trying to soften rush angles, and then he plays with great effort, so he tries to power through those rush angles. A lot more effective on the inside compared to rushing those C gaps. So he wasn't an impactful pass rusher, but I also would argue that he was not put in positions that allow him to be an impactful pass rusher. Now, I'm not expecting at age 31 for him suddenly to become this amazing pass rusher, but as a depth player, I think he's got a little something to him that can be unlocked in Buffalo. As a run defender, again, in this 3-4 look, he's two-gapping. So a lot of what he's asked to do is play with extension, get your hands fit, occupy blocks, and allow the second level to get downhill. But what I can appreciate about the run defender that I watched was the recognition skills, which I already discussed, and then he's not easily moved. It's not like single blocks are getting him out of his gaps. He's very competitive against double teams, even some good examples of him being able to split a double. You know, he's not a guy that's just getting moved all over the place. In fact, a lot of the teams that I watched him play, the Saints and the Dolphins, ran a ton of wide zone, and I could appreciate his ability to kind of leverage and squeeze some gaps. And so I think what really stands out from kind of studying him and thinking about him in Buffalo is that there's going to be a transition ahead for him to the Bills style of defense. And like I said already, I think he's probably going to be pretty excited about it. Clearly, he latched on with Coach Evero and got a lot of opportunity with Coach Evero over the last 4 seasons. But I think there's more to unlock in an up-the-field type defense that the Bills play as opposed to two-gapping and contain rushing the C-gap. Now, I don't want to overstate this. There's something to DeShawn Williams that I can appreciate. I don't expect him to come to Buffalo and be a high-impact player. But I think he can be a sufficient answer as part of this defensive line rotation. And you love the experience coming in and giving yourself more depth. And suddenly your defensive tackle rotation of like Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, and DeShawn Williams, there's a lot of snaps that those guys have played. And I think that's likable. So how does he fit into this Bills defense? Well, right now I view him as the primary backup to Ed Oliver at 3-tech. And the Bills they'll roster at least 4 defensive tackles, maybe 5, and they'll play 4 on every single game. And so right now, based on where the roster is right now, it's Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, and DeShawn Williams. I would think that DeShawn Williams is in line to play about 30 to 40% of the snaps. The draft, future moves can obviously change that. But I think that's where he's positioned as of this moment. And at a minimum, if the Bills do draft the defensive tackle at some point relatively early, this is good competition for playing time. And then, all right, if you draft the defensive tackle early, now DeShawn Williams is in a position where he kind of has to force the issue to make the Bills roster 5 defensive tackles. I think that's all good. Those are good dynamics that you want as you're building a 90-man roster at this point in time that eventually becomes a 53-man roster. But remember, this guy started 44 games over the last 4 seasons in the NFL. It's not like this is a nothing player. I would say he's far more of a snap taker than a difference maker, but he's not a slug out there. And I'm very curious to see what more could be unlocked in his game, because the style of play that he's going to get a chance to operate in Buffalo is drastically different than what he did with Coach Evero. It's totally different. I mean, he gets to play up the field, penetrate, get into the backfield, try to make plays. With Coach Evero, it's, all right, hold your ground, contain, defend 2 gaps, lock out, right? It's very different. And if I was a defensive lineman, I would not want to be one of those 2-gapping odd front guys. I want to be in an even front where I can get up the field and try to make some plays. And hopefully DeShawn Williams can do that in a depth role for the Buffalo Bills in 2024. So there you have it. DeShawn Williams, the newest Buffalo Bill. Hopefully this allowed you to get acquainted with him and you can have an understanding of the opportunity that he has in Buffalo and kind of what's happened to this point in his NFL career. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for being here. I love talking about all the players, whether it's a marquee signing or, all right, this guy's got a chance to compete for a depth role. Takes all 53. And I think if you've watched the Bills throughout the years, you know that. So glad we had a chance to have this conversation. Thanks for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.